And we also have this breaking news this morning, only on CNN. Former Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger, who says he's still a proud conservative, is now endorsing Democratic President Joe Biden for re-election. Kinzinger served Illinois in Congress for 12 years as a Republican. In his final term, he played a big role in the January 6th insurrection congressional committee as one of just 2 Republicans on that panel. And he just put out this video statement on social media.
I'm a proud conservative. I always have been. As a proud conservative, I've always put democracy and our Constitution above all else. And it's because of my unwavering support for democracy that today, as a proud conservative, I'm endorsing Joe Biden for re-election. So while I certainly don't agree with President Biden on everything, and I never thought I'd be endorsing a Democrat for president, I know that he will always protect the very thing that makes America the best country in the world, our democracy.
President Biden quickly responded to the endorsement this morning, thanking Kinzinger and saying this is what putting your country before your party looks like. Joining us right now is former Congressman Adam Kinzinger. It's good to see you again. Why announce today?
I mean, it just feels right. Look, we're getting ready to really hit the heat of the general election. I think it's really important for people to understand, particularly the 20% of, let's just call them the 20% of Haley voters, for them to understand that this is a stark choice. This isn't just, you know, who do I agree with more on certain issues? I actually don't even really know where Donald Trump stands on many issues. But this is about, does democracy survive the way we love it, or does it not? Do we continue to change these standards? I lived through January 6th. I didn't watch it on TV. I was there, and I have a 2.5-year-old kid that I do not want raised in a country where things like that are okay to happen. So for me, it's just, we've got to put decency above maybe political differences, and it's just the right thing to do.
Over our many conversations since you left Congress, you made no secret of your disagreement and distaste for Donald Trump, what he stands for and what he's done. But did you wrestle with this decision? What did you wrestle with most in making this choice?
I mean, I guess I wrestled to the extent of like, okay, you know, endorsing a Democrat as a Republican is a big deal. But to me, it wasn't much of I didn't have to look in the mirror and look into my soul or anything like that. I have spent the last few years on a committee, the last couple years in Congress, looking at the direct link between Donald Trump and what happened on that terrible day. And I hear the acidity, the acrimony that comes out of, you know, many people who are supporting Donald Trump and some of the people around Donald Trump, because he's created a culture of just anger and division. And for me, it wasn't a hard thing to say, look, I really put a lot on the line when I decided to go on the January 6th committee. I'll do it at this because this is truly the most important election of my lifetime. And I want, like I said, my kid Christian to be raised in a country where decency in the greatest office in the land is still something that people look up on, and not have a president that continues to punch down because he's such a whiny, weak victim that he's scared to death of anybody that says anything mean about him like Donald Trump does.
Would you frame it that you're voting, are you voting more for Joe Biden or more against Donald Trump? Which framing is it?
I think it's actually a little more for Joe Biden, because the difference here, now granted, if it was somebody else running, who knows, you know, in the GOP,
right.
But Donald Trump is the face of, he is the head of the Republican Party. Obviously, I don't like anything he's about. But Joe Biden has shown himself to be a decent man, even when we disagree on issues. And this is a tough thing in America. We've gotten into this box in the last couple decades where we feel like it's all about, we have to line up with one party 100% or another. No, this is about decency versus a man who's all about himself and doesn't care about you, truly. And so I think it's a little more for Joe Biden than it is against Donald Trump.
You know all of this. We've talked about it over the time, but looking back at some of the things that have been said about you by elected Republicans, including Donald Trump over time, you know, calling you a sick Republican, a horrible rhino, Andy Biggs calling you a spy for the Democrats at one point, and so on and so forth. I make that point because your endorsement's not likely to win over people like that.
Right.
If you're reaching out to the Haley voter, if you will. The Biden campaign has been making that play as well very clearly and putting money to ads to that. If it doesn't work if your endorsement and what you do from here on out until November doesn't make a difference, what does that say?
I don't, look, for me personally, it's just about doing the right thing. So I hope it makes a difference. If it doesn't, oh well, I can look at myself in the mirror. But I think for Republicans, look, this is a big question. That 20%, again, we'll just call them the Haley voters. Do they put the country and decency and strength in foreign policy? Donald Trump spent his time literally surrendering to every opposition in the United States, to Vladimir Putin, giving him everything he wanted. Do we stand for that kind of strength or not? And I think if nothing happens here, if there's no change, if no Republican votes for Joe Biden, which I don't see that happening, by the way, I think many will, it goes to show that we are in such a tribalistic moment that even decency can't beat out a man who only cares about himself. And that man who cares about himself is, by the way, again, the most complainiest, bellyachingest. He was president of the United States for 4 years, the most powerful man in the world, and yet he's the victim of every plot everywhere. Everybody's out to get him. He can't defend himself. I think there's a lot of Republicans that, when they realize it, don't want to follow a man who's a constant victim, a complainer, and as weak as Donald Trump really is.
Well, one man who has not been afraid to take a stand for quite some time and is doing so again today is Adam Kinzinger. Thanks for coming on. Talk to you soon.
You bet.